Hey, hi, hello, and welcome back to Ingenuity. Today, we're starting a new project that's a stark deviation from the previous two. Considering I've only filmed projects on Fords and lamented about my addiction to rusty ones, you probably don't know, unless you've kind of picked up on some of the stuff that I wear, that I've actually got an addiction to imports as well, specifically Subarus and Hondas. Most people in my personal life know me as a Subaru fanboy and kind of a devotee of, 1980s, well, kind of everything, but for the purposes of this conversation, 1980s Hondas. I had an EF hatchback I called Bandit. I love that thing. Autocrossed it. It was so great. I bought it for $100, rebuilt it. I dumped, I don't know how much money into the suspension and tires and everything. Setup was great. Car handled amazing. Needed a lot more power, but that's kind of the case usually, right? Unfortunately, I had to sell Bandit though. When my daughter was born, I needed some quick cash, and that's how these things go. But coming from a Ford family, the biggest turning point in my automotive life actually came in 2003. I was in the grocery store and I stumbled across an issue of Super Street. That June Auto WRX with the 500-something horsepower and the screaming yellow paint and the time attack setup, it stopped me dead in my tracks. It was just an absolute game changer. I picked up the magazine, read it, was completely immersed in this idea of Subaru, what they were, the platform. I was staring at the engine bay. It was so different from every American V8 I had ever worked on, and it wrapped me and consumed me, and I couldn't help it. I loved it, and I think it was something like the next month after, Subaru started dropping ads on the 2004 STI, which was the first STI badge Subaru ever sold in the United States. And it's been love ever since. So what the hell does any of that matter? Well, I figured it'd be a good idea to kind of give you some context to kind of frame out what I'm about to propose. So a while ago, a CRX popped up for sale by me. It had been neglected for something like 8 years, just sat rotting, right? So naturally it was cheap, needed a bunch of work. And I've always loved CRXs, even though I've never owned one. I've only driven them, and frankly don't know much about them, especially the earlier editions like this one, which is a 1985 high efficiency edition, which just makes what I'm about to propose that much funnier, well, at least to me. So I'm sitting there looking at the ad for the CRX, and an idea pops in my head. I bet I can fit a Subaru drivetrain behind those seats. And this idea, while initially it's like, that's a crazy idea, the more I thought about it, the more it started to make sense. I mean, I've worked on a ton of Subarus. I've accumulated a bunch of parts, including an EJ205 and 5-speed over the years. And, with the low center of gravity and torque of the Boxer setup, coupled with the whole lightweight design of the chassis and drivetrain, I figured you wouldn't need much power to make this into a monster. And if I used my 2004 STI as a reference point, not only do I have quick reference to measurements, that kind of thing, the aftermarket support for, the Subarus is so much greater than that of the CRX. We've got all those parts readily available too. So all we have to do is make the Subaru parts fit in the CRX chassis, and we're good to go. So yeah, that's my idea. Make a mid-engine Subaru-powered 1985 CRX time attack car. So yeah, that thing's super gross. Let's go clean it up. So, as you can see, the CRX is back in the garage, and we are finally going to get started on this thing in a very serious, methodical approach to the build. This is it. The build is happening right now. No more shuffling around, no more waiting for parts. Well, we'll probably have to wait for something, but for the most part, we finally accumulated everything I think that we need to at least mock the drivetrain up inside the car, figure out how to design the frame. Basically, if you can think of like the back half of like a Pro Mod car, how it's just like you have a horizontal bar and then the chassis rails come up. It's basically, instead of a rear diff, we're gonna have the whole engine back there. There's going to be support rails through. We did find some interesting things about the car in the interim. The whole passenger side floor pan, including the structural pinch weld and the channel, is actually completely rotted out. There's copious holes throughout the whole shell of the car that have just been rotted through. There's a bunch of plastic damage to the front. But yeah, there's spiderweb cracks, and you didn't think too much of it, and just being out in the elements, the slightest pressure just made them completely shatter. So what I'm going to be doing, I got to take the rear bumper off because we're not, the train is pretty much going to stick out where that license plate goes anyway. I'm going to take the rear taillights out just to keep them safe from being banged around. And then, once those are out of the way, I gotta get under there, find out where the structural channels are for the unibody of the vehicle, and then we're gonna start cutting. I have baseline cuts kind of mapped out. Now, we've got our trans, we've got our engine, we've got random mounts. I have this entire pile. It is a literal pile over here of parts. Spare parts off WRXs and things like that. So we've got the engine cradle, we've got including the steering rack and control arms, we've got the front spindles with the TR edition brakes, so that's good. We got our ball joints, we got a bunch of nuts and bolts and hardware, so we should be able to do it. And then I got a cheap little eBay strut tower brace to mock up to keep the tops of the struts aligned while I'm kind of putting it all together. So that's kind of plan of attack. Remove some stuff, cut some stuff, assemble some stuff, push it together and see what else needs cut, and then kind of go from there. And again, I'm sorry, I said a lot of crap. So, hey cat, no time like the present, right? Let's get started. Okay, so we got all this done. I think the next step I'm going to do is, I have this pallet over here, this blue guy, get the engine cradle off that, put that in the car, and see exactly where we are. Because there's no sense in making, cutting and then cutting back and cutting back and cutting back until we have enough room if we know exactly where the chassis rails need to go, is right where those struts are, which I have a strong suspicion that's where those rails are going to need to go. We might as well just cut it in one shot. So, that said, I'm going to break this down real quick and see what it looks like in front. Okay, so here's what we're looking at. Good news. The subframe actually fits in between the two strut towers, which is good. The factory frame rails are right under here. They go into the basically bands along right here. So that being said, what we should theoretically be able to do is when we cut this line right here, which you can see, the original line is that black line over up there. We're just going to cut on the other side of this. Bring that back, and then theoretically what we should be able to do is take that frame rail that we're going to put in there, that this is going to attach to, and tie it into the natural unibody frame rail of the car, and maintain rigidity. That's the plan, at least. So
fortunately, from this perspective, the only way forward that I know of is to just start kind of doing things. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so plan of attack is we're going to start cutting into the floor where those lines are. And like I said, try to tie this into the factory frame as best we can. Running up to the steel place tomorrow, I'm going to pick up the tubing that we're going to be using for all this. And yeah, hopefully within a couple days we can get this rear section mocked up. I took all my measurements off the STI, so we have that to base off of. And basically the crux of what I'm doing here is try to simplify things. Is I'm basically running a front cut off an STI. So anyway, that's the plan of attack. I'm gonna call it a night, wrap it up here, and I will see you guys in the morning.